You never met me before. I'm the whitest guy, as I said. I'm alarmingly white. I don't belong in this neighborhood. I stick out like a sore thumb. You look the people in the eye and you tell them, it's us against them now. This is us. I'm on your team. This is the victim's team. This is the victim's family. We're going to find out who did this for you, and we're going to bring them to justice. So if you get 3-4 hours of sleep in the first 48 hours of an investigation, it's a miracle. So much stuff in a short period of time. I always likened it to doing Chinese arithmetic in a hurricane. There was like a million things going on at the same time. You can't go back and tell the sergeant that, oh yeah, I was down in the Jersey City Medical Center, sat outside and cried in the bushes for 2 hours. And I had to be like a priest and also had to be a detective at the same time.
That someone isn't defined by their actions, whenever those are.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah,
and you were able to do that because you saw it happen in yourself.
I've managed to have 50 second chances. I've gotten my second and third and fourth chances, and I'm not going to be the ultimate arbiter of you made a mistake.
One of the reasons I do this podcast is because people don't understand what people go through in situations, and until you walk in their shoes and they're in their situation, you really don't understand. So what I try to do is, hey, listen, a little less judgment, a little more empathy.
Yeah.
And I think everybody would be a lot better off. Welcome to Bare Wires, where we have unfiltered conversation for curious people. My name is Brian Heyman. I'll be your host tonight. Tonight, we'll sit down with a man who walks into situations most people run from. Sean O'Leary has been a patrolman in Jersey City for a number of decades. Later, has been involved with top investigations in Hudson County. Sean has seen the good and the bad in the human being on this job, and he's looking forward to telling his story. The trauma, the crime, the brotherhood, and all the things that go on beyond the badge. Welcome to Bare Wires, Sean.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me. I have to correct you on one thing, though. I was never a patrolman in Jersey City.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked in the prosecutor's office, and so I never.
Oh, I thought you were.
Rode a patrol car. No.
Wow.
New Jersey is very, very unique in that detectives for the prosecutor's office work on all the major crimes in the counties in New Jersey, most of them, if not all of them. So I walked into the prosecutor's office in 2001. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I won a bet with the chief. I said, if I graduate number one in my academy class, what are you going to do for me? He said, well, you can pick where you want to work. And I said, I want to work in the homicide squad.
Wow.
He's like, I bet you do. Well, long story short, 6 months later and 9/11 later, I walked out of the academy. I walked into Dan Gibney's office. I said, hey, chief, guess who finished number one in the academy class? And he said, well, I guess I'm a man of my word. You guess you're starting in homicide on Monday. So,
wow.
So that was my, I never rode a patrol car. I have the utmost.
Never put on a police uniform.
We put on uniforms later in my career when we did like RDF, Rapid Deployment Force, and we did security at 4th of July events and a lot of major events like crowd control type stuff.
So before we get into that, I want to talk to you about, because you have an interesting story. Were you born in New Jersey?
I was born in New York. I was born in Astoria General Hospital in Queens.
And how'd you get to New Jersey? How old were you when you went to Jersey?
About 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
I started kindergarten in New Jersey.
Okay. Was that Jersey City at the time?
No, it was Hasbrouck Heights, Southern Bergen County.
Yeah, I know Hasbrouck Heights.
My parents are Irish immigrants. They came over here and
so they were your first generation?
First generation Irish,
wow. How many kids in your family? 3. Okay.
So I'm the middle.
That's a small family for an Irish.
It is. Believe me, I dated through the John Row with 11, 12 kids in the family.
I know. I come from 6. Yeah. My wife comes from 6. So, that was...
My parents both had, I think, 7 or 8 in the family.
Okay.
So, we toned it down. I think that was probably just because we were pretty much poor. We were broke.
Yeah, we were poor too, but that didn't seem to stop them.
It will not stop Catholicism. Yeah, keep it going.
That's
for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So you're going to school in New Jersey. Are you playing any sports? Are you doing anything along those lines?
Yeah. We moved from the Bronx. We lived in the Bronx on Decatur Avenue up there by
I'm
Fordham
familiar
Road.
with that. Yeah.
And my mother worked as the superintendent of the building that we lived in. Right. My father was trying to find his way. He ended up going to engineering school. He went and got his degree or license in air conditioning refrigeration, ultimately got a job in the New York Times. So moved from the Bronx to Hasbrook Heights. My mother was a secretary in Pan Am, the Pan Am building, now the MetLife building there above the train station there.
Yeah, right about Grand Central?
Grand Central Station, yeah. So we moved out to the suburbs. My older sister Deirdre and my younger sister Siobhan and us, a young family, and we started in Corpus Christi Grammar School in Hasbrook Heights. And
was that a Catholic school?
Catholic grammar
Do you have
school.
through elementary and high school? You went to Catholic school.
I went to Catholic school. Yeah. I was the only son, as my sisters call me, the Irish prince.
Okay.
So I ended up going to Paramus Catholic. They both went to Hasbrook Heights High School.
That's a big sports school, Paramus Catholic.
Big sports school. I worked there this morning, as a matter of fact. So
wow.
Still do security there.
Okay, cool. Some great athletes came out of there.
Yes.
Like also with Bergen, Don Bosco, the big three.
I watched them all, Brian Cushing and the Sims kids and all of those kids, Jabril Peppers and Rashawn Gary, guys in the NFL still today.
Yeah.
I love that place. I enjoy my time up there. I really enjoy actually having some kind of impact on the young guys. And I tell a lot of these stories to them. They think I'm just Big Sean, the security guy. And then you tell them that, I worked for 25 years, solving murders down in Jersey City. And it kind of like, they spark up. They're like, what? I thought you were just a security guard.
As growing up, what made you go lean? It's almost a natural thing for the Irish to go into either the fire department or the police department. Yeah. Matter of fact, I was just in St. John's and I was just sitting there with my wife and she was talking to another couple. I wasn't really involved in the conversation. And the guy says to her, he goes, what's your husband, either a cop or a fireman? She goes, no, he's not. Yeah. So he goes, you're not a cop or a fireman? I said, no, I'm not. What? I said, I own a business. I said, what? Talk about stereotyping. I'm not even in the country. I'm being stereotyped in the Virgin Islands. Anyway, so my point of saying that is that it is, there is a brotherhood. There is a lot of Irish in the police department, both in New York City and New Jersey, and firemen. That's where we seem to have gravitated to those places. And I know you're very involved in your heritage as an Irish
very much
first
so.
generation.
I was not earmarked to be a cop. I honestly had no idea that I had an affinity. I was supposed to be a lawyer. I went to college.
Where'd you go to college?
Went to Montclair State.
Okay, my brother went to Montclair.
All three of us went to Montclair State. Wanted to go to Iona terribly. Some friends of mine went to Iona. The Iona Gales intrigued me. But my parents were like, you want to go to Iona? Go down to the bank and get the loan.
That's
so
right.
I'm like, okay.
But Montclair, that's a state school, right? So
it was a state
the rates
school.
were pretty good. He actually went from here in Rockland. He was a runner, so they took him in Montclair.
Yeah.
That's the only reason he was going to Montclair.
Yeah. It's a great school. Looking back, the education that we got for that price was unbelievable. It's probably one of the hardest schools to get into in New Jersey nowadays. Right. It's super competitive.
Yeah, and they have a nice campus. It's in a nice area.
Yeah.
So you were going to school to be?
I was going to be a lawyer. That
really?
was my idea. I was going to go and one thing led to another. I ended up dating a girl whose brother became the Bergen County prosecutor, and when I graduated college, I'm like, let me go over there and see if I can get a job and, work my way through law school while I'm in the prosecutor's office. And when I was there, I kind of figured out, I didn't know that the prosecutor's office in New Jersey was the investigator of almost all major crimes, sex crimes, crimes against children, homicides. large-scale narcotics investigations, white-collar crime investigations.
So
it's
did
like-
you have to get retrained? Did you have to go to FBI, or did you, where did you get all your training?
I
to
mean,
do
it
this
was
stuff?
all on the job.
On the job.
So I went to the police academy in 1992, I believe.
Where
first
was that?
time. That was down in Fort Dix, the
Okay.
Division of Criminal Justice Police Academy. So while I'm in the prosecutor's office, I'm working as a civilian investigator, just moving paperwork from one side of the desk to the other. And I'm like, son of a, these guys are doing some big time. Let me get involved in this. And so then I put my hat in the ring to go to the academy. I had had some connections. John Fahey, rest in peace. He put me into the police academy. I pissed off a couple people because the Irish connection worked its wonders again, and I ended up landing on my feet as most people in my life have said. I always land on my feet somehow, despite me stepping on my dick along the way every single time. But went to the police academy. I was on the streets in Jersey City, or rather Hackensack, working narcotics. And the only problem with that was that I was a raging alcoholic at the same time.
While you were on the streets?
While I was on the job, while I literally went from the frat house to the station house.
So were the guys with you doing the same thing you were doing? Or were you...
It was, it was a copacetic situation.
Yeah.
You know, it was, nobody really took notice that, whatever. But I had DWI when I was in college. I was just,
and that didn't affect. No, that's never came up or anything. Nobody.
Never back then.
Really?
It wasn't as big a deal. I probably wouldn't have gotten hired today, with my background. But yeah, I had some pretty sketchy situations. I got locked up for God knows drunk and disorderly down in Myrtle Beach.
This is when you were already involved with the police department or the investigators?
We were in college, and shortly afterwards, some checkered, all alcohol-related incidents. I lost my teeth. These are not my real teeth, in case you're watching. I knocked those out at a wedding up in Maine one night.
Where in Maine?
Who the hell knows? I have no idea. Went to a buddy's wedding.
I have a place up there.
Yeah. So it could have been in your backyard. I have no idea. But yeah, so... Finally, I'm working in Hackensack for the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, and I got into another alcohol-related incident down in Belmar, where the Belmar police caught up with me like 3 times in the same night, and then ultimately, I don't even know what the hell. Oh, I went to go rescue my buddy who got locked up for drunk and disorderly, and then got into a argument with the sergeant behind the desk, called him all sorts of names.
Right. It doesn't work out well.
Kicked the door. I told him I was a big shot detective from up in Bergen County. He needed to release him to my custody and all sorts of dumb shit. He didn't take too kindly to it. And then I walked out and kicked the door open of the Belmar Police Department. And next thing I know, I'm cuffed in the parking lot. And I wake up and I wondered why my captain and my sergeant were in jail. And I sat up and I'm like, oh, shit. I'm the one in jail. Hold on a second. What are these guys doing in jail down here? Oh, wait, I'm the one in jail. Hold on a second.
Belmar, I used to go there as a young guy. That was a pretty wild place. You know? It was.
And
it's where a lot of people ended up going, having a pretty good time and getting a little crazy down there.
Well, I did that with fantastic aplomb that one evening. So, long story short, I go in the next day and. John Fahey says, "Listen, you need to get your act together. You're not going to be a cop here, so you're either going to get fired or you're going to resign." So I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to resign." So, long story short, and I never drank. That was the last drink I ever had.
So you just stopped.
1993. So the last Sunday in August of 1993.
You remember it like it was yesterday.
I remember it vividly, even though I don't remember anything.
So now you talked to Fahey, you said, listen, I stopped drinking. He believed that was going to be the case?
That was my understanding that, okay, I'm going to stop drinking and then I'm just going to go right back because, everything works out. Everything worked out for me. Well, in this case, it didn't work out. And, I stopped drinking and I kind of was rather introspective with myself, and I figured out that, life is a whole lot better when you can figure out, when you don't have to wonder where the hell you are and what you're doing.
How old were you then? Exactly.
I was 93. I was 25 years old.
Oh, you're still young.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't figure that out till a little later.
Yeah.
You know,
and,
I stopped drinking when I was 33.
Yeah.
So, and I can tell you some stories before that.
Yeah.
But when you stop, the world becomes a lot clearer.
Yes. Yeah. So I had an absolutely meteoric drinking career, probably from like 14 to 25.
Right.
I could drink a case of beer when I was 18 years old and just walk straight and sometimes drive and do all things that
You should.
and then wake up the next morning and go down to McDonald's at 5 o'clock in the morning and cook the biscuits and egg McMuffins. And
So you worked at McDonald's there.
never missed a day of work. I loaded trucks down in Grand Union. I would go in there absolutely ripped to shreds, out till 3 o'clock in the morning, start at 7, just sweat your ass off, come out
But
of
you
the,
get through it.
Yeah.
You say to yourself,
like,
God, I got through that day.
I got to get to the 10 o'clock break, and I'm going to be
right.
just fine.
Yeah.
Come out of the back of a truck down there and just be covered in black soot and crap, but just hustled and grinded every day. But figured out that after that, I said, you know what, life is, I lost how many girlfriends, I lost how many keys, money,
Cars,
relationships, everything, because I never figured it out. I had many red lights and sirens went off, and God bless my mother. She's like, I was waiting.
How was your
day.
father dealing with it?
My father, dealt with it. He's like, you got to fucking straighten yourself out. You're a fucking mess. Jesus Christ almighty. But it was always, drinking was an Irish thing.
What years was it? Was this in the 70s or was the 70s, right? This was going on in the 70s?
When I was a teenager. I was 10, 11, 12 years old in the 70s.
Okay.
That was another pivotal thing in my life. When we moved to Hasbrook Heights, my little sister Siobhan came down with leukemia.
Oh, wow.
And, that was a major event in our life. It altered the course of our life for years. We didn't think she was going to make it. I was young enough. I was probably 10 years old. She was 7 or 8 years old. And my parents went in and out to Sloan Kettering, and
you became almost unsupervised because they had their attention somewhere else.
I was absolutely unsupervised, and that was the ticket to do whatever I wanted.
I'm familiar with the story. I had 5 brothers and sisters. They couldn't watch us all.
Yeah.
So we were on our own for a lot of it. And it's weird that you even bring that story up because I came back from college and the first thing, freshman in college, I just got back for the break and they said to me, your sister has MS.
Yeah.
And, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And, you never think it's going to, happen, but she's still alive, thank God, and she's doing well. But it's been a long battle. You know what I mean? It's tough.
I remember going into Sloan Kettering. My father worked 3 to 11 in the Times, so he would go at 11 o'clock at night. He would go over to Sloan Kettering and sleep in the room with my sister, and then me and my mother. I had to get a spinal tap to see if I was a donor eligible for spinal fluid. So we go in. And I get the spinal tap. They take a needle the friggin' size of a pogo stick, and they friggin' jam it in the bottom of your tailbone, and you get a spinal tap. So I'm like, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, it hurt like ever loving hell. So the way it worked, and then my mother stayed there, and my father came home. I was done probably 10 or 11 o'clock. My father then took the car and drove back to Hasbrook Heights, got 3 or 4 hours of sleep before he went back into the New York Times for 3 o'clock again. So we're getting home and driving with my father, and I'm like, oh yeah, Dad, that was rough. I guess I'm not going to go to football practice today. He's like, oh, you're not going to go to football practice. You sure will. I'm like, all right, you sure? I'm like, my ass is killing me, but he's like, no, you're going to football practice. There's no way. I'm like, all right, you just give me a ride before you go down to go to work. He's like, Hey, will you ride your bike? I'm like, Dad, I'm bleeding out of my hole here. Like,
You sound like my friends in Ireland. That's why I'm laughing so
I
hard.
had a spinal tap. And I'm like, yeah, well, put the helmet on the handlebars of my bike, and away I went.
So you played football?
Played football. We had a phenomenal football team in Hasbrook Heights. The guys in Hasbrook Heights, I left and went to Paramus Catholic, but those guys ended up playing in the state championship.
Oh, really?
2 years. All the guys that I played with, junior year and senior year, they played in the state championship.
Wow.
Ended up losing to New Milford both years. And I went to Paramus Catholic, and I wound up winning 4 football games in 4 years.
Wow.
Absolutely deplorable football team at that time.
What years were those? When
I
you were
was 82 to 86.
Okay, I was coaching by then.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
actually out of college coaching.
Okay.
And the team that I coached a freshman team. A long story, but they ended up, they didn't have state championships in Rockland, in New York. But what they did is they brought it to New York, the first one up in Syracuse. They had the first state champion, North Rockland.
Carrier Dome?
Yeah. And the team that I coached as freshmen, when they were some of them were juniors, and the other ones, seniors, they won that state champion, the first state championship in New York, and it was wild. Matter of fact, I have one of the kids who played for me. His name is Derek Lassick.
Yeah.
He played for Alabama. And,
Really?
He was the most valuable player in the Sugar Bowl, which was the national championship.
What year was that?
This was probably, I was out of college, probably 84, 85. And it's funny because when he was a freshman, I was going to throw him off the team. And and this is how good a coach I am, right? So if you're a freshman and you get thrown off any team in North Rockland, you can't play the rest of the time. Now this kid was a superstar. But I had 60 kids. I mean, I had a monster of a team, and he had an attitude. And it's so funny because I was out after practice making him run because I was tired of his. And
you imagine that? That was your epitaph?
The other coach came out and said, "Brian, go ahead, I'll take care of it." I said, "Okay." So this kid comes. He as a senior becomes a Daily News, All-American, blah blah blah. Goes to Alabama, becomes the most valuable player in the Sugar Bowl, which was the national championship at the time. Goes on to play for Dallas and some other teams, right? And I'm saying to myself, God, I didn't throw this kid off the team.
Wow.
But they wouldn't let me do it anyway.
Yeah.
But it's funny because fast forward to about 4 months ago, somebody knows him. He lives in North Carolina, and they gave me his number, and I called him up, and he said to me, "Listen, I want to be on your podcast when I come back north again." Yeah, so Derek, his name when I had him was Derek Owens. Somebody stepped into his life, a male figure, Lassick stepped into his life and changed his whole life. He was a great kid after that. But it's so funny because he's in North Carolina. He goes, "Oh, I remember everything." I said, "Okay."
Wow,
I said, "I'm looking forward to having you on the podcast." He says, "As soon as I get it," he comes up here once in a while. He still has relatives up here. He goes, "As soon as I come up there, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about the old times." I said, "Oh, I'll look forward to that."
That's amazing.
It's crazy,
I'll
right?
tell you that the podcast that I listened to with the San Mateo School really struck a chord with me because of
he wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
He told me, he goes, "Brian, I got nothing to say." I said, "Okay." I let it go. And then I call him up the next week. I teach these kids snowboard. And so we talked about that. And I said, "Did you give the podcast any thought?" He goes, "Not really." He goes, "I really don't want to do it." I said, "Listen, we're both old." I said, we're both going to die.
Who knows how much time we have left.
And somebody needs to know what you did and how you did it.
Yeah.
And then he hung up the phone and he called me a week later. He goes, you're right. Let me do it. And he was great. It was
amazing.
From the Mother Teresa story to everything, he's a good guy.
And just navigating all of the bureaucracy and everything to get it done is incredible.
But he was preaching to one group and he was ministering to another in total different economic spheres.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay? He was telling stories about Newburgh while he was in Bedford.
Westchester and Bedford. Living next to
Isn't it weird that
Bill
connection
Clinton
came
and
through?
Donald Trump and
and if you
Martha
ever have a
Stewart.
chance to visit it, it's really an amazing place.
Yeah.
So
it was incredible. I was riveted to that. That was a great story.
So you're in the investigation unit in Hudson County, and there's things that come across your desk, that are horrific. And what I always see with investigators, it always struck me that they're never in a rush. Everybody wants answers from you guys. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to say, what happened? Who did it? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Why don't we have answers? But, I've been involved in a couple of investigations, and no one's ever in a rush. Everybody sits down just like this. They talk to you because I think they want to get it right more than they want to get it solved. They want to make sure what they do is above board.
When we fast forward through the 90s, I was kind of figuring myself out. So I just quit drinking and I started figuring. Did
you get any help, or you just quit?
I started with AA, but it didn't really resonate with me. My mind had been made up. I mean, I was absolutely humiliated when I left the prosecutors. That was literally my dream job, and I just played golf today with guys that I work with down there.
Oh,
and,
cool.
I could have finished my career down there. I would have been retired 15 years, 10 years at least. But it up and, but I ended up back on my feet. I worked doing investigations for the cellular telephone industry shortly after that. Traveled all over the country, trained Secret Service agents and cops all over the country on how to use cell phones and cell phone fraud for their investigations, which now is commonplace.
Right.
And long story short, one of John Fay's, God bless his soul, one of his good friends, Terrence Hull, said to him, he's like, if O'Leary ever straightens himself out, there's a spot for him down in Hudson County. Terry passed away too, unfortunately, but he was the first assistant down in Hudson County, and he had said in like 1997, he's like, if you ever want to come back to law enforcement, just give us a call. I know your whole story, the epitaph, the whole thing. I worked with his brother Wayne. He said, you're welcome down here. So wow. I'm like, all right, I'm going to move to Connecticut.
So that's a brotherhood that takes care of each other.
Yeah. So, again, someone who was always an archangel on my shoulder who took care of me. So I get downsized out of Singular Wireless. Funny story. They get the week between Christmas and New Year's 2000 going into 2001, I get a call from the corporate security department. I had a nice big job making $70-something thousand a year in 96 or 97. And they're like, you got to, meanwhile, I'm getting married in May of 2001. So my wife had just moved to Connecticut to be up there with me. We're engaged. Long story short, they're like, okay, they're merging Bell South and AT&T, SBC Communications. You can keep your job, but you have to move to Chicago, Dallas, or Los Angeles.
Wow.
And you have to let us know in a half an hour.
Wow.
I'm like, what? So I call my wife. I'm like, hey, hon, good news. I got a nice new job. Bad news. Where do you want to live? Dallas, Chicago, or Los Angeles? She's like, you're out of your mind. So they had a severance package. So I'm like, all right, so what do you think? She's like, we're taking the damn money and we're going back to New Jersey.
Okay.
And we're figuring it out. So long story short, I end up calling Terry Hull back. Terry says, come on down, fill out the paperwork.
How old were you now?
Now I'm 32 years old.
Okay, so that's probably the right age.
It's 2001. This is the spring of 2001. I go in and fill out all of the paperwork. Philomena was a secretary from Ireland. She sees my name again, looks after my ass. She's like, okay, you got to come back and fill out all this paperwork next week, all the financial and all this detailed investigation. I'm like, I got a little problem. She's like, oh, what's the problem? I'm like, I'm getting married on Friday. She's like, oh my God. So, all right, sit down, fill it all out here. She makes sure it gets hustled through. That's when I made the deal with Dan Gibney and said, I'm like, if I go to the academy and finish number one in the academy, what's in it for me? And that's when I got
wow.
the
So you were there left and came back and did
That's
this
it.
whole thing.
I ended up back in the prosecutor's office in Hudson County now. Bergen County was, they moved over.
Right.
They flipped prosecutors, and I didn't have the same hooks down there. So to the rescue. But once again, the Irish mafia came back to the rescue again and saved my ass. And went to the academy. I was in the police academy during 9/11.
Wow.
Got out of the police academy the tail end, probably November,
Right
December
after it.
of 9/11. The absolute greatest time on planet Earth to be a cop. People carrying you through the streets. You couldn't buy a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
in Jersey City.
It was a very unique time in this country. I got to tell you,
unbelievable. So, that reaffirmed my love affair with law enforcement, and in particular, homicide and major investigations.
So how does that actually work? A department the cops show up to a scene, they see someone's been murdered, and then they make a phone call. Hey, Sean, we're going to need you down here. We got DOA here, or and that's when they call you. That's when the clock starts for you.
That's when the clock starts ticking. So again, 2001, we started with beepers. And then probably somewhere around 2005 or 6 or something, transferred over to the cell phones.
Right.
But I was married to that beeper and that cell phone for the better part of 25 years.
So did you go to the office every day, or you were just waiting for that call?
No, we're in the office every day. I worked either 8 to 4. I started 8 to 4, 9 to 5.
Yeah, but these things don't happen 9 to 5
They don't
or 8
happen.
to
And
4.
we had squads. We had the day shift and we had the night shift.
All right.
And I managed to evade the night shift for a lion's share of my career until I made sergeant. And they're like, the gig is up. You need to be on nights. You've been skating for way too long.
Yeah, because that's when the action happens, right?
That's when a lot of the action happens. But throughout my career, I was literally in a love affair with homicide investigations. So I would be there half the time until 7, 8 o'clock at night anyway.
So this is something that you really enjoyed getting involved in, trying to figure out the whole puzzle that went into it. Some of them were probably pretty easy. Other ones were a lot more difficult.
Some were real easy. Some of them were real hard. I was extremely fortunate. A lot of credit has to go to my wife. My wife was absolute stalwart in our life. She knew that this was my passion, and she recognized it, and she just...
Do you have children?
Yeah, I got twin daughters.
Okay, so
twin beautiful
how
daughters.
that affects your family when you're getting a call at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night and saying, listen, we got a problem, we need you on the site.
Absolutely. My twins were born in 2006. My father died 30 days after they were born.
Wow.
Yeah, he had lung cancer. It took him. I was so grateful that he got to see them before he died. He had gigantic hands. And literally my twins...
What did he do in the old country before he came over?
He was just a rebel. He was...
Okay.
He used to always
Where
say...
Where was he from, by the way? Because I'm
from
familiar.
Wexford and County in Ireland, the southeastern rebel country. And he said he went over to England and worked over there. He did everything. He said he drove a double-decker bus in Birmingham. He said he tried every day to flip that bus over and kill every one of those.
It's funny because I have friends in Belfast, so you know the situation.
Oh, yeah.
And he's been over here a bunch of times, and I've been over there a bunch of times, And
we have that similar. We have that. We had a kid over from Project Children.
Yeah, we had same
David,
thing.
Yeah.
We had, and the kid, we still see the kid. He stayed. Matter of fact, he was still coming when he was out of the program, totally out of the program, because we were. So I told this story before. He gets to the States after flying to London and flying here. He's been on planes all day. He's exhausted. He gets in the car, and I say to him, "Listen, Brian, I got some good news and bad news." I said, "The good news is we're going to Maine." I said, "The bad news is we're going right now.
We're leaving right now." So.
But he was a great kid, and I'm very good friends with his father. Matter of fact, his father was really, he was just under the age with the Troubles, okay? Yeah. But his brother was killed in the Troubles, and his brother-in-law was killed in the Troubles. So he was very familiar with the whole thing. Yeah. So I'm trying to but he never really wants to talk about it. But I did read this book, Say Nothing, which gave me a lot of insight. I'm still trying to get him over here. I want to put him on the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will understand him with his brogue and everything.
Especially with that Belfast accent, yeah.
So he's coming over, right, with his wife. This is the first time. And, every other word is, so it's just part of the language. So
forget about the C word. You can his wife curl some hair the way they talk.
So his wife says to him, listen, we're going to the Haymans, you can't be talking like that. And, it's like, you gotta, curb the language and everything because it's part of the vernacular is what it is, right? So he gets here and he hears me. So he goes in the room with his wife. He goes, hey, what's going on? He can say it, I guess. So that just let everybody loose,
Opened the floodgates.
He came back to himself and he was speaking exactly the way he always does,
Yeah.
So, but you're in that situation where you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm getting called for these. How does that affect you? When everyone is different, all right. And when you walk onto a scene, what are the first things you start looking for on a murder scene? Is it different on every one of them?
Yeah,
What do you get information before you get there?
We get the basic information. So, typical case: Jersey City police, someone gets shot on the street outside of a bodega or something like that. So the guy gets pronounced. The EMTs come over here and they say, okay, he either died in the hospital or he died on the street right now. And, call the homicide squad. So they secure the scene. They tape it off, the usual stuff. The body's laying there under a white sheet, or the body might be down in the medical center. So as a detective, I get a call from my sergeant, and he says, okay, you go to the medical examiner, or rather the hospital, go down there, see if you can recover the victim's clothing, go down there, find any family members that, might know what was going on, this, that, or the other thing. So pretty early on in my career, I developed a pretty intense empathy for the victims, because oftentimes I was the guy who would go to the hospital, and you walk in and you got 10, 15 family members just going absolutely berserk. They just found that their loved one was killed in the streets of Jersey
Did they
City.
ever turn that anger on you?
Absolutely, yeah. And you have to be a pretty amazing person at the same time. You have to try to have empathy for the victim and their family, mostly their family.
Right.
And you can't go back and tell the sergeant that, oh yeah, I was down in the Jersey City Medical Center, sat outside and cried in the bushes for 2 hours. And well, what'd you find out? Well, nothing. I didn't ask any questions. So I had to be like a priest, and also had to be a detective at the same time. So sitting down, and mom's crying, and she thinks that, the world of her son, and that he might not be involved in any kind of nefarious activities that may have led to his death, but I need the real truth.
Right.
Was he involved in drugs? Was he involved in gangs? Did he have any enemies? Did he have,
Would people offer you information, trying to get to the killer itself? Like, hey, listen, I know he had a beef with these people. He was doing this, because whatever crime he was committing at that point, it's irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
He's dead.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And
so was the family helpful in that way? Because all these people know what's going on. I mean, these are all tight-knit communities that know exactly who's doing what.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Largely, and that was the art of navigating the whole thing. You could, there are guys that I work with, I wouldn't let talk to the cat outside. They absolutely have no interpersonal skills whatsoever. I was blessed with a sense of humor and the gift of gab, and I could talk to anybody, and it became my biggest skill set probably throughout my career, that I had the ability to elicit information from people.
Yeah, because that's critical.
It was
to solve these crimes.
It was incredibly, and as I went through my career, I basically break up into thirds. Like the first 5 or 6 years that I was down there, I was just kind of soaking stuff up. I was, I had some excellent mentors, and my sergeant, Charlie Russo, and John Appleyard, and these guys that I worked with, they taught me how to interview people, how to have empathy, and how to show people human kindness and do the job. Where there were other guys that we worked with were like, these guys are savages, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah,
like
I've been involved with involved with both of those situations.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I quickly learned that it's not a very effective way of doing police work, particularly homicide investigations.
They pick up on that right away. People
is
in those situations pick up on those vibes right away. If they think you're sincere about actually solving the murder, which I'm sure a lot of murders don't get solved, they're going to, and they think you're doing the job, they're going to come to you with the information you need. But if they think you're just bitching and moaning,
if you're full of and you think like, oh, this guy's hanging out in the street, he's dealing drugs or whatever.
Who cares?
Gets what he deserves. Another, dead black guy in the hood. Who cares? But you cannot do this job that way and be effective. To be quite honest with you, and I learned that you pick and choose what you picked up. Some of the guys that had that idea and that theory were incredible at other parts of homicide investigations.
For example,
some of the guys were incredible interviewers. They were incredible. They could find people like no matter where they tried to hide. There were guys that would on the computer could do computer searches and go through phone records and stuff like that, and they could find somebody. He could be hiding in Timbuktu, and they would find him. There's so many facets of what we did that everybody's good at something. You had most of the people that weren't really great with people. We put them in the crime scene. Like, you're going to swab blood. You're going to pick up shell casings. You're going to dig for bullets in walls and stuff like that. But some of those guys were also unbelievable interviewers and interrogators. And at the time, the crime scene guys would do the crime scene. They would do that for 10, 12 hours. Then they would come back and they would be like, okay, we got a witness. We're going to go into the interview room and interview him. And they were phenomenal at that.
Now, all these shows that, the 48 hours, was time that important? Is time on solving these murders the critical element to actually getting them solved? Do they go past a certain time where you say to yourself, okay, this is going to be almost impossible, so we're not getting the information we should be getting. We're not getting any information, and to solve this is going to be very difficult. Eventually goes into a cold case, whatever you call that. But is it really like these, people think you got to solve this within 48 hours or it's not going to get solved. Is time that important?
The first 48, that is my job, by the way. If you watch TV and you watch those guys on the first 48, that was my job. That was literally it. They were supposed to come up to Hudson County and do a show in Hudson County.
Oh, really?
It got all the way up to the prosecutor and the first assistant's desk, and they put the kibosh on it for whatever reasons. But, I was going to be a TV star. Now,
just missed that. You just missed your fame. Now you're a podcast star. It doesn't pay the same, but
the timing element, the first 48 is incredibly important. The first 48 hours of a homicide investigation is when you say, you know what, I'll sleep next week. So if you get 3-4 hours of sleep in the first 48 hours of an investigation, it's a miracle, because things are moving so quickly, and so you have to get all of this information. You have to write subpoenas for phone records. You have to write search warrants for houses. You have to track down family members. You have to make notification to the family if it's not already done. You have to
collect the cameras.
Later on in my career, the cameras became the driving force. But you had to do so much stuff in a short period of time. I always likened it to doing Chinese arithmetic in a hurricane. There was like a million things going on at the same time. And the one thing that aggravated the ever-loving Jesus out of my supervisors, that I always looked like I was moving in slow motion. Meanwhile, my mind was racing a million miles an hour, but I was kind of moving purposefully and slowly.
Right. I would think, that's what I was trying to say before. I've been involved with people doing investigations, and it's almost like, okay, there's a a purposeful way to move through this and get as much information as you possibly can. And then there's a chaotic way to move through this and not get the stuff that you need.
That's
okay. At the end of the day, the guys that can control that emotion, okay, in these situations, because let's just face it, it's very emotional. Whether you're involved in it or not, that situation, when you walk into that situation, you get dragged into that emotion, everybody going crazy. So if you can't control that, that's a problem.
And it was always, especially when I was a sergeant, when at the end of my career, the last 7-8 years, I was a sergeant. So I was in charge of every homicide that we caught. And it would be a myriad of phone calls from the prosecutor and the chief and the first assistant and the assistant prosecutor and my boss, the captain, and the other sergeants. And everybody wanted to know the amount of information that would be funneled through people to other people who then, of course, invariably would have a million questions about this, that, and the other thing. So I would be standing at a scene and I would be on the phone. Yeah, 90%
I always
of the
wondered,
time.
how are these investigations shaped or moved politically? There's political involvement. Somebody gets shot in the street, that's your district.
Yeah.
How do you maneuver around that, or you just didn't care about that particular thing, or was that forced on you? Okay, we need this done, we need that done. This is a politically sensitive situation.
Mm-hmm.
I got election in 3 months, and this is going to be a problem. How did politics, get inserted into your investigations?
In many cases, we had, especially in Hudson County, you're talking politics. Politics is a way of life down there. But yeah, it depended upon what city. So we had the 11 towns in Hudson County, Jersey City, the biggest, Hoboken, Weehawken, West New York, North Bergen, Union City, Bayonne, and Kearney, Harrison, and East Newark. I think I got all of
Jersey City being the toughest.
Jersey City was obviously
and then maybe if you were to say,
what's your guess?
Some of those other places are pretty good. Like Hoboken's still good. And,
Hoboken would always contribute 1 or 2 or 3 a year.
Okay.
Bayonne always had a couple, blue collar town. There would be some domestics down there.
Right.
I had husbands kill wives, wives killed husbands. Everybody kills everybody down there.
So the political thing is one pressure that you're getting.
That's
okay.
Always,
that probably comes in pretty quickly. You probably learn pretty quickly that, hey, listen, this is a hot one.
As soon as we got a Union City murder, we're like, son of a bitch.
Really?
Here we go. The mayor's going to be calling the prosecutor, and we're going to be doing some dumb shit. We're going to be following some asinine lead or something like that. But that was just, par for the course.
Okay, so that was part of it.
All right. And that was, as a sergeant, that's what I kind of weeded out. I was blessed with some of the best detectives that you could possibly ever have.
Yeah, lucky.
As a sergeant, I worked with these guys. My partner Scott Jeffrey, who I missed a turn on the way up here because I was talking to him on the phone. So he has a memory like a steel box.
That's cool. That's critical.
Yeah, a lot of other guys: Matt Stambuli, Mike Crow. My partner, Brian Cahill, was a Jersey City cop. He was on loan to the homicide squad during when my kids were little. And we had 50 murders in 2005, right before my kids were born.
That you handled?
That the Hudson County Prosecutors Homicide Squad handled. So we had anywhere between 11, 12, 13 detectives. There was 4 sergeants. They were broken into 4 different squads, and you were on call once a month. Okay,
so if 50 murders, were they all different? I'm sure they were all different in some way, but was there an overriding factor that you saw common? Was it drugs? Was it poverty? Was it a combination of both of them?
Yeah, I mean, socioeconomics and drugs and gang. You say gangs in Jersey City.
Right.
It was more like streets and the different projects. They always had some kind of beefs with each other. That would be one of the first things you looked at. If a young black guy was murdered in the streets of Jersey City, you're like, okay, who's he with? Where does he live? Who does he hang out with? And then you find out, okay, and then who's his natural enemy? We started a gang squad down in Jersey City in the prosecutor's office in, I can't remember the year, 2012, 13. Those guys did unbelievable work. So they knew every single guy in Jersey City and what set he was with. Keith Stiff, my old boss, and Pat DiCarlo and those guys, they worked in the gang unit, and they would identify who was with what gang and what project and what street, and they would know pretty soon after somebody got killed, okay, sounds like this is, Curry's Woods versus Saloff, or this is Marion versus Lafayette, or depending upon...
Those are streets.
Yeah, those are the projects, and those are the different streets, Lexington. There was different areas of the city, and they were always beefing with each other. And then,
did you ever wonder? Like, I've had this conversation with the sheriff of Rockland County, the sheriff department, Lou Falco. I don't know if you know him or not.
Don't know.
But I've had this conversation about, I'm a gun owner.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're a gun owner. I have, I have multiple handguns and stuff, and I'm always amazed by how easy these kids all have guns. It's like how, for me to go get a gun in New York, I have to go to the store,
jump through that hole right there. That
tell him I want this gun.
Back up the other side,
Tell him I want this gun.
Yeah.
Give him my license. Then I have to take that. I can't even. I have to pay for the gun.
Yeah.
I have to leave. I don't have the gun now.
Yeah.
I have to put it on my license. I got to send it to the judge. The judge has to look at it and say, okay, you can have that gun. Then I got to take that paper, go back to the store, and finally get my gun.
Yeah.
Now everybody has a paper trail of me having that gun. Everybody. I mean, if that gun shot anybody, they knew it was mine at one time.
Yeah.
So I'm still. He didn't give me the answer, and I'm still trying to work through this. How are all these guns flooding to? I mean, every kid seems to have a gun. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're all carrying guns.
Why are you still renting your electricity from a utility company every single month? You're watching your bills go up. You have no control over the rates, and every year it just gets worse. Last year, for the same time period during the winter, I paid $825. This year, I paid over $1,200. Something's got to change. That's why I want to tell you about a local company in the tri-state area called Onsite Energy. These guys aren't salespeople. They're operators. They actually know how to design a system that makes financial sense for your house. With Onsite Energy, you're not just putting panels on the roof. You're locking in the cost of power. Now, I've seen a lot of companies in this space, and I had my doubts about solar energy. But as my bills went up, I figured I'd give it a look. Most companies I talked to overcomplicated it. But with Onsite, they kept it simple and tells you straight if it works for you. At least get the numbers. Reach out to Onsite for a free consultation. No pressure, just clarity. Give it a shot. Start to control the cost of your energy. Click the link below in the show description and get 6 months free.
They're so easy to get in the hood. They're run up the I-95 from the southern states where they have largely like straw buyers, but there's guys driving up a 95 right now as we sit here with a trunk full of cheap-ass handguns that they sell in New York and New Jersey and the cities.
There's nothing that can be done to try to eliminate that.
There's the ATF, I guess, has cracked down on it to a degree. There's a lot of like straw buyers, guys who are in this trade, just like the drug trade. The gun trade is equally as ubiquitous there, that you could get a gun in an hour down in Jersey City. If somebody's always got one, they're all over the streets, and each little group, each little project has
each
has
state,
them.
So if I'm a straw buyer, I'm going into a gun store and I'm going to buy 10 handguns.
Yep.
Okay. There's no record of me buying those 10 handguns.
Yeah, there is.
Okay,
there is.
So when it shows up on a murder on the streets of Jersey City, I'm attached to that gun. Okay. Yeah. So so then you look at a serial number, it's going to run back to me.
Yep.
Okay. So what happens at that point? You will go back to the guy, and the guy says what?
Again, the guy that I'm investigating, or
yeah.
Oh, he's just like, nah.
No. The guy who actually bought the gun.
Bought the gun? Well, that's an ATF thing. That's because that's out of our jurisdiction because they're down in Virginia or North Carolina or South Carolina. So the ATF would handle it. And then the most common answer is like, oh, yeah, I bought that gun, whatever, a year ago, 6 months ago. It was stolen out of my trailer home
That's
or whatever.
That's the answer he gave me too.
Yeah.
And I just can't live with that answer.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you could probably stick your hand harder through this paper than you could reach into somebody's trailer home and open it and take everything out of it. But unfortunately, this is a gun culture. This is a gun-loving country, and the more guns, the better. And we find them though. They get to the streets of Patterson and Jersey City and Newark, and
you find some guns that are in multiple crimes.
Yeah,
handed off to one.
We used
guy
to do the
another.
ballistics. We used to work with the Newark, had a ballistics unit in their department, and we bring the guns over there, and they get us the report back, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this matches a murder that was in Patterson.
Wow.
And that was the way they would do it. They would get a gun, and if it had a body on it, you would take that gun and you would trade it over to somebody in Jersey City, and then Jersey City kills somebody with it. Next thing you know, it's over in Newark. By the time it's done, the gun might have 4 or 5 bodies on it.
Wow.
When they do the ballistics, they're like, this matches the gun casing, the casings of a double homicide in Newark that happened 3 years ago. Oh, it's involved in a shooting that they collected casings up in Patterson. End up down in Trenton. We had guys down in Trenton, and it's just, once the guns get here, it uses up its life in the jurisdiction where it was, where like the Patterson or the Newark or the Jersey City or the Trentons or whatever. Then boom, you just trade it around, and they get theirs, and everybody kind of trades it around. So that's how.
So I don't see any end to that little mess going on.
No, and I can count on one hand that the murders that I investigated where it was a registered gun to somebody that actually used a registered gun.
Wow.
So probably worked on, I don't know, I can't even figure out the numbers, but probably somewhere between 450 and 500 murders in my career, over the course of my career.
Out of all those murders you worked on?
Maybe 10 registered guns in the entire time.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it's
insane.
just like the Wild West.
Yeah. I mean, as a law enforcement officer, my personal opinions aside, there's too many goddamn guns in this country. Because they're too easy to get illegally.
Yeah, I mean, it's too many.
They're everywhere. Every grandma's got one, and she's got one in her car, and she leaves it unlocked, and she goes into Walmart, and somebody reaches in and takes her pocketbook, and there's a Colt 45 in there. Well, yeah, they're just everywhere.
Wow. Wow. It's just my experience in getting one and what they put me through. I'm trying to say to myself, how is everybody getting guns? I mean,
I have friends that got them in Jersey, and they're like, they had to jump through flaming hoops to try to get
I can't even get a
permits
license in Jersey. Yeah. I'm licensed in 38 states. I can't get one in Jersey, which is right across the border here.
I'm like, give me $2,000. I'll fill your trunk with guns in a half an hour. No problem. You won't have to fill out a piece of paperwork. No problem. I'll go down.
With all those murders that you've investigated, are there a couple of them that you just can't shake? Are there a couple that, listen, when you walked into the situation, you thought it was just going to be another day in the job, but it's lasted a long time with you?
Yeah, there's how long do we got? It's going to be.
Listen, we see there's no clocks in this place for a reason.
It's like a casino. Yeah.
You can be here forever.
Cover up the windows.
It's still light out. You're good. You're still light out. You're good. Any that, say to you, listen, I've been, and I know you've been through a lot of them, but like some of them that, stick with you that you just can't shake. I know you take all of that home with you. It's very difficult to leave that on the job. People don't understand that there's PSD involved in that. And, we'll get into that in a little while with these murders, seeing what you're seeing. How does that affect you? But is there a couple that you say, man, I just wish I never even got to that one because that's just horrific?
There's a couple. There's a few. And like I said, I was just talking to my partner on the way up here. Melvin Santiago was a young cop down in Jersey City, and he was ambushed and murdered outside of a Walgreens down in Jersey City. I got the call for that a couple hours into it. Quickly got the video. To make a long story short, the guy that was involved in that murder and ambushed and killed Melvin Santiago this guy took a gun off a security guard, an old security guard who was working armed security in a Walgreens down on Communipaw Avenue in Jersey City. And the people that were in the Walgreens called Jersey City and said, there's a guy who just stole a gun. He's robbing the Walgreens. So Jersey City police show up in pretty short order. The guy had, unbeknownst to them, they all locked themselves in the back room, unbeknownst to him, walked out into the parking lot. And as the Jersey City police were arriving, as the young cop, Melvin Santiago, was on the job for about a year, maybe, working midnights down in Jersey City in the South District.
Wow.
Gets out of the car, and this guy, Lawrence Campbell, basically turns around and shoots Melvin right in the face from point blank range and kills him. And then the responding cops end up getting into a shootout with this guy, and they ended up killing him. What haunts me about that case is that this guy, Lawrence Campbell, had murdered a guy about 4 days earlier. He shot him on Jewett Street in Jersey City, and that was my case. Murdered a guy, basically walked up to the window, was sitting in the car with a girl he had just picked up. She was working. They're sitting in the car just bullshitting, and asked him for a cigarette or something. The guy's like, "Nah, I don't have a cigarette." Boom. Ends up shooting this guy almost the same exact way. Shoots him, ends up shooting him in the eye.
So it was your case originally?
Originally, the 4 days prior to, that was him. He was driving in a car with a couple people, and this guy just was a sociopath. I mean, he was.
So you were hunting him down at the time.
We were hunting him down. The unfortunate part of that case is the victim on that case, he didn't pass. He was in the hospital and he was on life support, and I think they ended up harvesting his organs. The difference was that the Jersey City police, they handle aggravated assault. So until somebody dies,
Wow.
Jersey City's handling the case. The guy's lying in a hospital bed, and he's inevitably, unfortunately, going to die.
You weren't called in because you were only called into homicides.
We're called in. So this one comes, he gets killed on, I think,
Right.
a Wednesday night into Thursday. He's in the hospital. Jersey City's investigating
Right.
it. The nurses say, this guy's unfortunately not going to make it. We don't know when. They're coming. They're going to harvest his organs for donation, et cetera. So there's literally like 48 hours, again, between the Jersey City Police Department and us. Then we kind of merge our investigations. Long story short, we had just kind of investigated who the guys were that were involved in it. The same guy, he was actually getting driven around by a friend of his who was paralyzed, and he was driving a car with his hands, and they were smoking PCP and stuff like that. So the guy was literally off the reservation. He ends up, same guy, he murders the guy, Michael Siegel, I think was his name, on Jewett Avenue on maybe a Thursday morning. And then Melvin Santiago got killed that Saturday night. But I think that if it were a standard homicide, if we had gotten the job right when it happened, I'm not saying anything with the Jersey City Police Department, did a phenomenal job. We actually had identified those guys, and we're on our way to go talk to them when we find out that this whole thing happens with Melvin Santiago. And I can only, it haunts me still to this day that maybe we could have prevented that. If
Right.
we'd have,
I want to get into that because in New York, I don't know the case in Jersey, but they have these bail laws where you have to release, and it's almost asinine to watch what's going on here. These people are being brought in and they're being released. And I don't know if that's going on in New Jersey, but that would be extremely frustrating to me, especially in your position, to find somebody who's been killed by a person that you actually had in custody at one point. Does that go on? Have you encountered that a lot?
It never really happened in New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey was one of the earlier states to have bail reform, and But with major cases and almost every, if not every homicide, we would move to detain the person until trial. And you basically submit probable cause. You would have to have your investigation kind of in full gear that you could present to a judge the probable cause for detention, and that would go on after we arrest someone. We would certainly make sure that we weren't going to just arrest somebody willy-nilly because we think or we're pretty sure that they did it. We would have to have our shit would have to be in order, because 2 or 3 days later we're going to have to go in front of a judge and say, Judge,
convince him
this guy should not be let out of jail. He's got to sit in jail until the trial comes, because, whatever the case may be, the probable cause that we have, the heinousness of the crime, and the seriousness, and he's a danger to the society. So, there were some judges that were more apt to do it, and there were some that were a little more lenient.
Well, the reason I asked that is because it seems like every day in the news or somewhere, they had somebody, they detained somebody, multiple crimes in the past, and that person ends up taking somebody's life. And,
there were.
There's some frustration with the general public about the criminal justice system and how it's actually and what they're doing to protect, the citizens of the area.
There would be nobody more frustrated than a detective or a cop. But you have to live within the framework of the legal system, the criminal justice system. You have to put your faith in the criminal justice system and the process. And that was a major part of my maturation. As a detective, you become you conform to the rules, and if you're not good at your job, people fear defense attorneys. They're like, oh, that guy's a great defense attorney. He's going to make a monkey out of me on the stand. Like, not if you have your in order. You're not. You're gonna. If you know how to testify, and you know how to write a report, and you know how to defend what you did, and it's a defense attorney's job to make mountains out of molehills. I'm going to do 1,000,001 things in a homicide investigation. They're going to harp on the 1,000,002 thing that I didn't do.
Right.
They're going, did you interview this person? Did you interview that person? I'm like, no, I didn't interview that person because they had nothing to do with
relevance.
it. Yeah, but in a courtroom, a defense attorney is going to put on a show and say, oh my God, they didn't talk to this person or that person. They're always going to focus on what you didn't do instead of ignoring the mountain of evidence that's over there of what you did do.
And do you find that most judges would lean towards releasing people if there was any doubt at all that,
No, I mean, the judges in Hudson County were fair. They released a couple of guys that we were scratching our heads, but the defense attorneys made good arguments. The objective of bail, and it's patently unfair to the lower socioeconomic environment. The bail is just to ensure that you show up for trial.
That's correct.
Bail is not meant to be, and should not be, according to the U.S. Constitution, should not be punitive. You should not make a bail so that someone sits in jail because you think they committed a horrible crime. We're innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely.
So the problem with that is if you got lots of money, you can get out of jail. If they set bail at $1 million and you got $6 million,
what if you're a repeat offender?
You're a repeat offender, and that's where the probable cause hearings would come in. One of the major criteria on a detention hearing is that they're a recidivist. They have committed crimes, violent crimes before. Boom. That sets off. That's almost automatic.
Okay, so point. What you're saying to me is that plays a major role in the judge's decision whether to release that person back out without bail.
One of the major criteria for detaining someone until trial.
Okay.
So if someone murders somebody, the severity of the crime, a first or a second degree crime in New Jersey, murder, manslaughter, etc., those things are almost always going to get it. But there are exceptions. We had guys that shot and killed somebody in broad daylight in Jersey City, and because the kid had no criminal record prior to and showed that he had a stable family and XYZ, and the defense attorney made a cogent argument that he should be on home refinement or an ankle bracelet or whatever the case may be to ensure that he's going to show up for trial, and he let this get out.
Wow. Wow.
You know, it's not popular, certainly, in the homicide squad, but again, we have to live in the confines of the criminal justice
It's got to be
system.
somewhat frustrating. You know, when you guys do a job, you finally find somebody who's committed this heinous crime and he walks out of the courtroom. I mean, at some point,
Well,
you got to say to yourself, what are we doing here?
It's one thing to walk out of the courtroom until your trial. It's an entirely another thing to walk out of the courtroom after the trial. When you lose a homicide investigation and a trial, and you know goddamn well what this person did and they got away with it, that will turn your stomach.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
got
will
to
keep
be,
you awake
that's
at
got to
night.
be,
Yeah.
an awakening, like you said, and it's happened to you. It's happened
You want-
more than once.
It's happened multiple times.
Wow.
One of the cases, I'll tell you, I wrote it down because my memory is like a Swiss cheese, but we had a case when I was a young detective in 2002. Oh, sure. Girl, I'm actually playing golf. It's the same course I was playing today, Paramus Golf Course. I'm out, and I have a beeper. I get a beep on a Saturday afternoon. Some lady walked into the West District of Jersey City and told the detectives there that her brother killed his girlfriend back in the 80s. I'm like, what? Like, what? So meanwhile, I'm on like the 9th hole. I got to walk all the way back. I got a pager. I got to go to a payphone. And my sergeant tells me this whole thing. He's like, you need to go down to the West District and talk to this lady. She might be out of her mind. I have no idea. She's telling us about a murder that happened in the 80s. It's now 2002. Blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
So I go down and I talk to Mongoose, was a detective in the West District. And he says, yeah, this lady came in and said that her brother killed his girlfriend, hit her in the head with a hammer, and threw her down the stairs over by the Charlotte Circle. And she helped him roll the body up in a carpet, put like brick pavers and stuff like that, put it into the back of their father's car, drove it over to New York City onto one of the piers, and threw the body and the carpet and everything taped up into the Hudson River. And I'm like, what?
That's pretty descriptive.
And I'm like, okay, what year was this? She's like, I don't know, like 1979 or 1984. I don't remember. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So now all of a sudden this becomes my problem.
Right.
My sergeant's like, okay, take a statement from her. We're gonna start figuring this whole thing out. So it leads to a whole investigation. Long story short, we narrow it down. We think it's 1982. She told us that it was the year that her son was born and XYZ, and her brother and the mother were kind of aligned. They both knew what happened, obviously. And
Really?
they knew, and they kept telling the sister that if she ever tells anybody about this, they're going to have the son taken away from her. They're going to say that she's an unfit mother, and they're going to take the child from her. So long story short, the whole thing goes on. We figure out that the reason why she went into the police station on that day was the day that her son turned 21 years old. Wow. So she walked into the police department 21 years later and said, this is the day that they can never take my son away from him. He's going to be a grown adult, and he can speak for himself. And that was what they held over her head for all those years. So she came in and gave as detailed a statement as we could possibly get from her. We pinpointed the time frame when it happened. This is largely before computers. This is 2002. I end up going over to the medical examiner's office and having them pull all the files for females that were found in the Hudson River between June and September, the summer of 2002. They come back and there's like 50 bodies, females that were pulled out of the river.
Oh my God.
So I'm like,
Just for that time period.
just for that time period. So now I'm sifting through all of those records. We narrow it down. We're like, okay, about 38 of these things are no good. This girl was a young Hispanic and female. She had some tattoos, etc. So we take 38 of them and we say, okay, these are no good. They had good pictures and stuff like that. Meanwhile, half of the files were just garbage. Like, how could you even tell what? But they had Polaroid pictures that were crusted over, and so we get to about 12 of them. We're like, okay, any photographs? Now we got to go back and get. Okay, there were some photographs that were taken. She had a tattoo of a rose on her forearm. Her name was Rosie, so she had a tattoo of a rose. So bodies in water, they don't take too well. So some of them, these things are absolutely unrecognizable. So we get the photographs, and we narrow it down even further to about three of the bodies that
Could be.
So we go and we look at the photographs. We're like, we think this one girl is. So we go and get some hair from the mother. The mother's still alive. She's living in West New York. We get the hair. We go over to the medical examiner's office. We're like, okay, this girl, nobody ever claimed her. Nobody ever said who she was. She was buried in a potter's field.
Was there a
Brooklyn.
missing persons report?
Missing persons report? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. It's the oldest case in Jersey City police files, active police case. The case of she's a missing person. She was never found. She was allegedly, according to the boyfriend, she was kind of like a hippie, and she wandered off and went to go visit a friend out in Arizona and never heard from her again. And that was the story that he had told over these years. They had a fight, and she left and went to go visit her friend, XYZ, and was never heard from again. Something terrible must have happened to her. So Jersey City has an active case, open missing persons case.
Okay.
So we write court orders and everything like that. We have the body exhumed from this potter's field.
Wow.
So meanwhile, the guy that I'm working with, John Appleyard, he was kind of lead investigator at the time. I was just a rookie. I was out of the academy 9 months probably. So I'm doing all of this stuff, and my sergeant's helping me out. I'm writing court orders to have bodies exhumed and everything. So they finally get the body exhumed. They call over like, "Yeah, we found it. Come on over. You can bring the mother's hair in a bag. We can do the testing." It's right after 9/11, so they had the state-of-the-art DNA lab in the New York
Which
City
changed
Medical
a lot
Examiners.
of stuff in your business. Yeah.
So go over there, bring the hair. I go into the medical examiner's office, and I'm like, okay, there's going to be a body around here somewhere. And they're like, yeah, okay, you ready? I'm like, yeah, where's the body? And I'm like, sorry, is that right there? Meanwhile, there's a shoebox. It's probably about this big, and it looks like it has a few sticks in it. And they're like, yeah, that's what we got. That's what it is. There's a couple of bones in there and everything.
After all these years.
Like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I'm like, what? So they're like, yeah, you got to, we think there might be like a part of a femur bone in there. Have at it.
Enough to do DNA.
So I'm like, okay, what? They're like, yeah, if the femur bone.
What were you hoping to see, a tattoo?
I was hoping for anything. I was hoping for a hair, a face, or anything. I got none of that. So I got a shoebox full of like will look like sticks. So they're like, if there's any kind of bone marrow in the femur, we could do the matricular DNA testing. So they're like, feel free. I'm like, feel free to do what? They're like, yeah, there's a hacksaw over there. Just, hacksaw the bone, and we'll let you know if anything. I'm like, I'm doing this? I'm like, I got out of the police academy like 3 hours ago.
Whoa, wow.
So sure enough, hacksaw away. We get the bone. They do it. They get some bone marrow out of it. Boom, comes up a positive test. This is body they found floating off Governor's Island in the summer of 1982, and they also found like fragments of the skull, and it had a perfectly cylindrical hole in a part of the skull.
For the hammer.
Boom. And then all of a sudden, then we're off. Now we got a victim of what appears to be a murder. We got an eyewitness that tells us all about it. And we go on, and this was the suspect at the time. We go and we just dove through his entire life for the last 20 years. And apparently this guy, when he had a couple of drinks, every girlfriend that he had subsequent to that, he would tell, yeah, keep f***ing around and you'll end up like Rosie. I'll f*** kill you like I killed my old girlfriend, dump you in the river, and nobody will ever
So
find
you interviewed all them.
We interviewed actually dozens of girlfriends and friends and all of these people, and some of them, claimed nothing, ignorance, nothing to do with it, but several of them said that, yeah, when this guy, when he tipped them back, he liked to talk about how you would end up like Rosie if you didn't watch your step or this thing, and he was just a violent son of a. So long story short, we end up with enough to arrest him, and it goes to trial. We bring all of these witnesses in. We go through the whole DNA thing, how we found her, all of the painstaking work. He goes to trial, and the prosecutor cannot say that he has to be charged with first-degree murder or second-degree murder. He cannot be charged with second-degree murder. So he gets convicted of manslaughter, and due to the statute of limitations, manslaughter had a 5-year statute of limitations. He walks out of the court.
Oh, my
free man.
God.
After all of that shit, we went through the whole entire case, the whole entire trial. The jury could not be instructed because it would prejudice them. They couldn't say that he had to be convicted of first-degree murder because first-degree murder was the only case that didn't have a statute of limitations on it at the time. So he got convicted of manslaughter, stood up, and walked out of the courtroom.
Oh, my God. The first thing that comes to my mind is the girl that came to you, tell you this story, she must be in danger. You know what I mean? To some extent, unless she moved out of the area. Because I'm saying this guy's out of his mind. And, once he went through that, thinking he got away with it, which he did, he was free to do something really terrible to the person who came to you and said, listen, I saw this.
Yeah. It's an ironic fact. The only internal affairs complaint that I ever got on me was from that witness. When we were preparing her for the trial, we were literally playing board games, and she didn't like the way that I played the board game, like Monopoly or Life or something like that, and lodged a complaint with the Internal Affairs Department that I was mean and wasn't nice to her. That was,
oh my God!
While we had her sitting in a hotel room before the trial, she was in protective custody.
Right.
So we had to sit with her in a hotel room when we were playing Monopoly one night.
So that person gets released back into the public after the trial?
He gets released into the wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only solace we had about that, it was when we finally got the arrest warrant. We got the arrest warrant for him. I arrested him outside of Mazer's Bakery down in Lyndhurst. And he had been remarried. He had a pregnant wife, and he was buying her a donut and coffee before he was going off to work. And we arrested him. We took the donut and the coffee off of him, put handcuffs on him, and brought him down to our office. And his wife had the baby while he was in homicide's custody.
Wow.
That's the only solace that we could have had. And while we were walking him out to take him to jail, maybe this is a sadistic, I should probably not be telling you this. As he was walking him out in handcuffs down to go to jail, I walked past him, and I was drinking the coffee and eating the donut that he was going to bring home to his pregnant wife. So,
oh my God!
But there is a mean streak in some of us. But
you go through that year in and year out. You see these horrific situations, and you say to yourself, okay, you've seen the worst in human beings, what they can do.
Yeah.
And how do you say to yourself, there's still hope? Do you say there's still hope? Is there still hope for society in general, the way one person treats another? After you've been in this situation, seeing these things, you must say to yourself, how could somebody, you must say it 100 times to yourself, how could somebody do this?
Yeah.
And it has to test your fortitude on human beings being good and bad. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
How could somebody be so evil? Where does that come from?
Yeah, and I have seen absolute evil. There's no question about it. But if you go through your entire career thinking that there is no hope and that people are genuinely bad and there's no good in anything, then I think you're in for either a miserable career or life. You know, there's going to be, that's why so many cops drink and so many cops do, you know, are engaged in terrible behavior. They're just trying to run from, you know, some of these certainties.
Do you think that there's a ton of undiagnosed PTSD in retired police?
Yeah, it's a lot of self-medicated PTSD for sure. It takes its toll on you. You have to be extraordinarily resilient and cognizant of what this is doing to you on a day in and day out basis.
Not only to you, but to your family and everybody you deal with.
That's
like
what
you're coming home from a murder investigation and you have to deal with some minor miscellaneous thing. And you're saying to yourself, this has no, you know, I just came from, you know, this high energy, high dopamine type situation. I come into where, you know, your kid got in trouble in school and you're saying to yourself, I mean, it's nothing to me. You know what I mean?
Well, that's where a good wife comes into play. To be quite honest with you, my career would have not amounted to anything, but not for my wife and my wife raising my twin daughters. She is the most incredible mother, and I was almost absent for entire decades.
And when you were there, you were absent.
I was always, like I said, at my retirement party, I was married to this cell phone for 25 years. There was never a time where the cell phone called and said we had a murder, and I could say, oh, my kid's got chicken pox, or my wife's not feeling good, or we're going to go see a play or something, like literally drop everything.
Do you have regrets for that?
Yeah, there's absolutely guilt. There's a lot of guilt. But my wife has been so understanding and so supportive of my career because she saw.
How is your relationship with your twins?
My twins, it's phenomenal.
So they understood what you were doing.
They understood from a very young age that Daddy has a major league job. They bragged about me in school all the time. They were extraordinarily proud of me. Cool. So it made it easy. Listen, I wasn't ignoring my kids. I'm not going to say that I was an absentee father, but they knew, like, if the phone rings, Daddy's got to go to a murder, Daddy's got to go to a job. Daddy goes to a job. That's the way it goes. I went to tons of their softball games and field hockey games, and but I would also be the guy who was showing up coaching their basketball game with a gun on my hip and a suit like Pat Riley, with a handgun, screaming like a lunatic on the sideline. They're like, Dad coaches a little bit differently. Like, we get a lot more calls when Dad's coaching.
This is going to be a crazy question, but do you miss it? Do you miss the action? Do you miss being on this, involved, trying to figure out those puzzles, trying to put the pieces together, and trying to get some satisfaction over, giving some family member justice, for their loved one? Do you miss that?
Yeah, there is no question that's irreplaceable. It's to do
So how
that.
do you replace that dopamine that you used to? I mean, when you walked into a situation, you were in control of the situation.
Yeah.
You had to put the pieces together. You had to put the puzzle together. There's a certain amount of satisfaction, energy you got from that. I mean, that's just what you did because you couldn't have done it otherwise.
Yeah.
So how do you replace that, or do you replace it?
I don't think it can be replaced.
Okay.
I think you have to file it away as just fond memories. We were. It's funny because I did exactly what we're doing right now in the squad room in the homicide squad for years and years. We would sit down and we would go over cases and we would talk about funny things that happened and sad things that happened and unbelievable things that happened. But we did this for years. We literally were talked about. We should have a podcast in the homicide squad.
Absolutely.
But we were the I'm not even going to mince words. We were the homicide detectives, and we thought we were the baddest motherfucker.
Because you had to solve the
place.
problems.
And we dressed up. We dressed like $1 million. We had suits and ties on. And I always said, the Jersey City Police, I'm eternally grateful to them because they allowed me to walk onto scenes and remain safe. They always had our safety at heart, and we walked around like we were the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. And when we got out of the car, you could literally hear the crowd say, "Oh, homicide's here, motherfucker! This is serious."
So what I'm saying to you is, with all the horrific things that you saw, there was a part of it that kept you going back to it and saying to yourself, okay, this is a job that I actually enjoy doing. I actually figure it out. And with all the bad things that I have to see and witness and hear, I'm still willing to go out there and do it because it's the right thing to do. And I get satisfaction out of solving this crime. And when you went to the people that were related to them, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, and said, listen, we got the guy that did this. I'm sure you've done that a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. That must have been satisfaction that you could, it's tough to describe, where they say, thank God. That person has already passed. There's nothing you can do, but until somebody gets arrested for it, that's still lingering, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that was one of the things that I focused on at the tail end of my career. As a sergeant, I made it almost mandatory for my squad that when a person was killed in Jersey City, we would go to the wake.
Okay.
It was something that was really never done before.
I imagine
but we would go, the homicide detectives, again, were dressed to the nines. They saw us out on the scene. We might have been wearing a pair of BDUs and a golf shirt. When we show up at the homicide or at the wake, you walk up and you say to the family, obviously, we're sorry for your loss. And it showed an empathy to the family, and it had such value to them and to us, because then it created like a teamwork environment where it's going to be us against the bad guys. You never met me before. I'm the whitest guy. As I said, I'm alarmingly white. I don't belong in this neighborhood. I stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, but there's something that carries with that. They know you. They know you're outside, and they want to make sure that
you look the people in the eye and you tell them, it's us against them now. This is us. I'm on your team. This is the victim's team. This is the victim's family. We're going to find out who did this for you, and we're going to bring them to justice. I can't guarantee that they're going to get a life sentence. I can't do anything. That's out of my hands.
Right.
I'm going to gather the facts. I'm going to work this case as hard as humanly possible. And I had dozens and dozens of people had come up to me, and people that work for me, and guys that were great at this job that I worked with, and said, if anybody, I couldn't have picked better people to work on my beloved's homicide than you guys, because you guys literally cared almost more than some other people, some family members. And it was hard. It was hard to stomach that you would go and you would say, okay, your brother was killed in Jersey City. What happened? Who was he hanging out with? I don't talk to the police, man. That's your job.
Yeah.
That's your job. I'm like, yeah, it's my job, but it's your interest. I'm going to do I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to take care. If I had $1 for every person that said they were going to take care of this themselves, and you're full of shit.
Right.
You're full of shit. Hollow words. I'm going to take care of it. I can't take care of it, if you know what I mean, but I can bring this person to justice, and I'm going to do it with or without you. It's easier with you, but we'll do it through you or over you or around you, whatever we have to do. But that
had to be frustrating.
The gratitude, yeah, it was frustrating. But again, you have to accept that these defeats are going to come. Right. It's like driving down a school zone. You got to do 15 miles an hour. You might have to be in a hurry, but you got to go to speed limit. You got to do what you got to do. But when you finally tell someone that you arrested the person that killed their mother, their daughter, their sister, their brother, and they collapse in your arms, and they can't even speak, and the tears are streaming down their face, and tears are often streaming down my face, because this is unbelievable. I'm getting choked up now, but I have a case where two young guys were killed by another third young guy. There was an argument. They put a picture of the one guy's daughter on there, and the other guy made fun of the daughter, said she looked like an alien, et cetera, so forth. They get into it, gets set up. He shoots and kills the 2 young kids, 20, 21 years old. Murders 2 kids. Short order, we find out who did it. He ends up, we got him dead to rights. He pleads to 75 years.
Oh my God.
The cost, I'll get into the cost later, but the mother of the one victim, she knew, obviously we told her that her son was passed, et cetera. She helped us with the investigation, all of this stuff. The guy went to jail for 75 years. She sends me a text message every St. Patrick's Day and says, God bless you, Sergeant O'Leary. Sean, her son's name was Sean. She says, God bless Sean. He's up there in heaven. He's going to watch over you. Every single St. Patrick's Day, I get choked up when I hear it. It's absolutely unbelievable. And to think that I could have an effect on somebody's life like that, working on one of 450 murders or whatever the hell, I don't know what the number is. The number is high.
You got to get your head around the fact that there's nothing you can do for the victim at this point.
Yeah,
the only person that you
gone.
can help are the people that are left behind, and those are the most important people.
And that was one of the things that I learned throughout my career from multiple guys, Vinnie Doherty's, and I'll drop names, and Charlie Russo's and John Appleyard's. They were really, really good at it. And I learned that. And when I became the person that was in charge, I said to my squad, I said, if you're working for me, this is what we do. We work on the murder. We work all day, all night. Tell your wife, tell your kids, you're not going to be home for supper. That's just the way it goes. And we're going to go to the wake, and we're going to sit down with the family, and we're going to let them cry in our arms, and we're going to do everything that we can to figure out what happened to their son or daughter or mother or father. And that's just the way we do it. And with that came an inordinate amount of success. And it was largely, that was one of the components of it. The next component was we knew what we were doing.
Right.
We knew what we were doing, and we were good at our jobs. And I had people at work with me that believed in me because of my career, the 15 or 16 years that I was a detective, a run-of-the-mill detective, that I knew what I was doing. And if I said we should do this, they're like, okay, let's do this. But if I didn't know what the I was doing, I would sit them down and say, well, what should we do here? How should we go? What's our next step? Should we do this, that, or the other thing? And it was kind of a collaborative process. And I didn't like to manage or lead, as an authoritarian. I wanted to do it kind of democratically. And
yeah, what you bring up is critical to what people don't understand. I'm glad you brought it up. Is that in order to be effective at your job, and you have to have that confidence in fellow workers, which automatically bonds you guys like no other business. Okay,
yeah.
That's seen from the outside, and people resent that. They say to themselves, "Well, these guys are all, these guys are going to take care of themselves. They're going to do what they want. They're going to take care of themselves." And to a certain extent, that's true. And I can give you a couple examples when I was with cops. But my point is that you live with these guys every day. You rely on each other. You're not effective unless you guys are working as a unit. And to be a unit, you have to take care of each other. The public doesn't understand that. The public sees a cop. They say, okay, this cop is in with this cop. I'm not going to get a fair shake. So this is this double-edged sword that's always going on in society here. And they don't understand that the effectiveness of the cops really depend on how close they are and how well they work together. Because if they don't, you're not going to solve these crimes.
Yeah, and to be quite honest with you, that is the secret sauce, the camaraderie amongst law enforcement and cops and the patrol guys. They have the similar experiences that they like. Listen, you're driving around in a patrol car at midnight in Jersey City, down in some of the worst blocks down there, and then you could hear the gunshots going off blocks away and whatever. That's a common experience that bonds them. I never claimed to have that, but we had the camaraderie and the same experiences that, I've been in the homicide squad on Christmas Day. I've been there on Thanksgiving. I've been there on New Year's. I've been there on my 5th wedding anniversary. I remember telling my sergeant at the time, Keith Stiff, I'm like, hey, boss, tomorrow's my 5th wedding anniversary. He said, oh, yeah, tough. Hopefully you'll have a 6th because you ain't going home tonight. And again, that goes back to my wife being an unbelievably understanding human being and lending me to the Hudson County Prosecutor's Homicide Squad.
You're unique in that situation. A lot of times that's enough to break up families, and I'm sure you know guys that happens.
Yeah,
so
tons and tons of broken marriages, and that's more the norm than the exception for sure.
So I know you go around and you testify, you're expert witness. I would say in certain situations. What is that like now? I know that keeps you busy running around doing certain things. They bring you in for what type of testimony?
I still manage to testify largely in homicide cases. I testified yesterday out in Queens, but any cases that involve phone records. I work for, we'll call it the biggest one. We won't mention the name, but one of the biggest phone companies there is, the oldest one. And when the phone records get introduced, they need someone from the phone company to largely be the custodian of records and explain, all of the different columns, the date, the time, the elapsed time, the cell site location is obviously very important in homicide and major case investigations, where that person was making phone calls from or receiving phone calls from. So I testify on behalf of the phone company as a quote-unquote
Has technology helped these investigations or hurt them?
Unbelievably helped.
Okay.
Unbelievably. It's probably the major factor in, I'm not sure if you could say that the precipitous drop in the homicide rate in the entire country, but I would say that the advent of technology and most importantly video surveillance and the ubiquitousness of it, that there's a camera literally on everybody's front porch with a Ring camera and surveillance cameras everywhere. It used to be you would have a surveillance camera in a bank, you might have one in a bodega, and it would be one of 15 videotapes that was sitting in there that's been taped over 450 times. When you looked at it, it looked like you were looking through a piece of wax paper,
But now you have some
Now the video is absolutely unbelievable. We get license plate numbers from cars driving by at 90 miles an hour. The 4K video is absolutely unbelievable.
So technology has really helped the investigation.
Major league. It is nearly impossible to get away with murder in this day and age. You really have to.
That's a good note on this podcast. I think it's a warning that it very few places in this world you could be and get away with something without somebody catching some kind of video or something with you.
That's what makes that Savannah Guthrie case or the Guthrie case
I really
so
can't understand
puzzling to me.
I can't.
I'm not gonna say anything about how.
Let me ask you a question because you bring that up. Are there cases that come up, just in the news that you say to yourself, oh, if I was on that case, I think I would have done this or would have done that, or would you, or I would have liked to be on that case? Is there anything that stuff that comes up? You still say you still have the juices going? Like
there's definitely cases that I say that I would like to be. Okay. I would like to be a part of. I would never second guess another law enforcement agency because the appetite of like the media and the average internet sleuth, they don't know 90% of what is actually going on and what has been done. And I would hate to be second guessed. I am going to be second guessed on the stand when I testify in the trial. The defense attorney is going to tell me everything that I didn't do right and didn't do this or that or the other thing. So I have to build a case, and I don't want to be second guessed by somebody else saying, oh, bull, this. We had a series of people, guys always ended up in the river down in Hoboken. There would be, every year, one or two people would end up floating up in the river and, whatever the circumstances were. But there's some blogger down there, I think it's the Hoboken Horse or some other jackass or something like that, has a board or a message board or something, and they would claim that there's a serial killer is is kidnapping young males and throwing them in the river and making them look like suicides or accidents or whatever the case may be. And every time we would go down there, it'd be a floater, and we would determine it was either a murder or a suicide or accidental or whatever the case. I did all this work, busted my balls.
And one guy gets on the internet.
Didn't go to how many softball games, and this dumb hump is over in his house telling us about the serial killer throwing perfectly healthy, good males in the river, and we got to watch out for him.
Would you ever think about putting your foot back in the pool as a consultant for departments? They would call you in. They have a murder. This is something that you obviously have a tremendous amount of experience in, and they would say, come in. We want to pick your brain. We want you to come in and figure. We're stumped here a little bit, or is there too much pride, and they wouldn't do that?
I don't know of any law enforcement agency that would be up for that.
Right.
I mean, it would be an intriguing possibility, but I just don't know of it. At this point in time, my expertise maybe in a trial, like a less experienced trial attorneys, like even when I go and testify for the phone company, I end up talking with the district attorneys or prosecutors or whatever, and just kind of imparting my wisdom. I can't help it. I can't help it.
It's in your blood.
It's in there. It's got to come out somehow or another.
Well, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I was fooling around when we were talking, setting this thing up, and we missed each other a couple of times. But I mentioned to you, I think there's a book somewhere in the head there, and you laughed, and I wasn't really meaning it as a joke. I was actually saying, with all the different experiences, there was a book written by a district attorney in the county, Gribbets. There's a long story behind that, but and he went through as a district attorney in this county writing. It was called Murder Along the Way.
Yeah,
and he went through every murder up until a certain point and stuff like that. He was later caught in women's clothes in New York City, but that's a whole nother story. My point in even bringing up the story is that I think there's a book there, and what I'd love to see you, and it's so much easier today to write a book than it was even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago with AI and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you would ever consider just doing a memoir or going through these things. I think you have something. Would you ever consider doing that?
I would absolutely consider that. It's really my attention deficit disorder has probably been the one major factor that has prevented me from trying to do that, because the best cure for attention deficit disorder is a job that's never, ever the same one day after another. So, I looked at...
You were blessed with that, if nothing else.
Yeah, but I also, have completely undiagnosed ADD, and it becomes apparent, when I'm working in the middle of a homicide investigation, there's 5,000 things going on, and I'm keeping track of 10 or 15% of each of them, and then I forget about it, and, then reports pile up and all of that stuff. But getting back to it, I think there is a book in me. This comes much more naturally to me talking about it, because my brain
your verbal skills are a lot better than getting
Thank
organized.
God to Mr. Fedemi, my English teacher at Paramus Catholic.
I'm the same way, by the way. I'm the same way. But you sharpened your verbal skills whenever you have a deficit in something else.
Yeah.
So, but there are ways you could work around, especially today and age with the AI. And I would love to see you really. I think this, it would get the dopamine that you seem to always want up again to sit down and do that. And I think it would be a great story. I mean, we didn't get into a lot of the things on purpose, but all these different situations that you have, and all these things that you bring up in conversations when you're talking to people that and when I first met you, you were telling, these things just roll out of you. It's just a matter of organizing them and putting them into a book. It would be a great book. Matter of fact, I have a guy I played football with, Leo Longaro, who's on the West Coast now, retired cop, and he wrote a book. I'm not even sure what the book is. I haven't done the research on it. But when he gets back in the area, we're gonna sit down and do a I actually played football with him for a number of years. We're gonna have a podcast, but I think, what I told you about the author downstairs is that I said, was it hard to write a book? And he goes, it's daunting when you look at it from the outside, but when you get in it, he says it's not too bad as long as you do it in a certain way. And, I'd love to put you in touch with him because I think you have a book swimming around, and I think it would give you some relief to just lay it out all on paper,
And my wife always busted my chops. She would go to Christmas parties or any holiday parties, and all of a sudden she would be, talking, and then all of a sudden I would just take over because people are intrigued by my life, and
it's an intriguing life.
I'm an Irishman, and I could talk the ears off the statue. So
you were the Grand Marshal in the parade.
I was the Jersey City Irishman of the Year 2023.
Okay.
I have now taken to singing Irish songs on a float down Newark Avenue every St. Patrick's Day parade for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So
you have some talent in singing.
Well, that's up to the beholder. Yeah, that's definitely a subjective.
Have you been over to Ireland?
Yeah, I went over when I was a kid.
Okay.
We went over every couple of years.
Yeah.
Went over to my grandmother's. My one grandmother in Cavan had a working dairy farm, and
I love it
had
over
all
there.
sorts of animals.
I've been all over the island, but I love there.
Some of my fondest childhood memories are from over there. Absolutely. And I didn't even know. I just thought every kid went over to Ireland or England or Poland or wherever the hell we were from. But yeah, that was a unique experience that my parents, they saved every penny. And we used to fly over on Aer Lingus and drive out to Kennedy Airport. My father would smoke about 2 packs of cigarettes on the flight and put out the ashes into a heaping ashtray on the airplane.
Drop into what?
Yeah.
Now you would go where? You'd fly to Dublin, I guess.
We would always
or Shannon.
Shannon. We would always fly into Shannon, and it was unbelievable. I remember the first time. I can still remember it vividly when you break through the cloud cover in Shannon Airport, flying over Shannon Airport, and you literally see the 40 Shades of Green, the fields and everything. You're like, holy. Never seen anything like this.
That West Coast is just a beautiful, beautiful area.
So now that I'm a golfer, I'm an avid golfer. I've been over many times playing golf. We went over for our 40th birthday. I hopefully get back again.
If you were to talk to a young guy who's thinking about getting into this business, this detective business, what would you say to him now? I know it's changed since you started, but what is it something that you would say? Yeah, I think this is what you need to do, or this is how you should go about it, or you shouldn't really even get involved in it. How would you? Because there are guys that want to get into this, and they look for people who've been in this and say to themselves, okay, maybe I can get some advice from somebody who's already been through this. How do I manage my emotions? How do I not let this consume me when I'm doing it?
I am always openly encouraging people to get into this vocation. I mean, it was the most fulfilling career that I think I could have ever imagined for myself. So I think that if you do it right, and there's no way for someone to say, oh, no, you should do this or you should do that. It's such a learning experience, and every day you learn so much about yourself, really, to be quite honest. It's such an introspective career that you find out that, when I first started, I was a little bit lazy. I took shortcuts and stuff like that. And I quickly found out, that's not the way to do things. You got to do things better. But people told my parents were telling me to clean up my room and don't be lazy, take out the garbage, whatever, my whole freaking life. So, I didn't listen to them anytime. How many times I told you shouldn't be drinking so much? I didn't listen to a word they said then either. You have to kind of figure it out on your own. The sobriety thing and the homicide thing, or they kind of merge, in that people know that I don't drink. I'm very open about it. And I say, listen, I'm never going to preach to somebody. I'm never going to say, hey, you got a problem. The only person who's going to say you have a problem is you. And the only person that's going to say that, I hate people because they're evil and they kill people and they do bad things, is you. That's a decision that you made about humanity. You have to have an open mind about what it is. And even criminals, people that were convicted of crimes and have served their time and done it, I've stayed in touch with, and people have said that, you know what, you have made a difference in my life. I did something horrible and I served my time. Guys, we had a case that a guy was killed in Jersey City early on in my career. He was shot and killed in the projects, the Lafayette projects down in Jersey City. He was selling drugs or something, and the one guy that was his turf, he killed him. I remember going to the family and letting them know, like, your dad was killed in the stairwell, et cetera, this, that, and the other thing. And the wife was there and a couple of kids. Long story short, fast forward to my career, I had to arrest the son that I told her his father was. I had to arrest him for murdering a guy in Jersey City. That was the arc of my career. Wow. And I tell that story, I'm like, I'm pretty sure, I don't have a vivid memory, but I'm pretty sure this kid was sitting on my lap at one point in time when I told his mother that his father was killed in the project stairwell. And here it is now, 15 years later, I'm arresting this kid for murdering somebody. You know, that kind of just tells you, like, and still to this day, I don't hate these murderers. I don't, you know, people.
These are situations.
People do. Most murders, 90% they're situational. Yeah, they're situational. And this one in particular, it was transactional with the dad. He was doing what he was doing where he wasn't supposed to be doing it, according to the guy who was making up the rules that day. And the guy who had the gun was making up the rules that day, and he said, you shouldn't be doing it. That's, it's outside of my purview.
A lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people, it's not that they're bad people. They did bad things in situations. And people can't get by that. But I'm sure you've seen things that have helped you, in these situations that have been like, wow, I see this and that gives me solace or gives me hope, because even in the chaos that you're involved in, there are things that happen, I'm sure, in these situations that say to yourself, okay, reinforces your belief in humanity, or you wouldn't be able to do this, even in the worst situations,
Absolutely. So. And one of the things that is a constant theme is drug abuse, use and abuse, and alcohol use and abuse.
Absolutely.
Those things are constant themes that come up, and maybe it's because of my experiences with that, but for the grace of God,
Absolutely.
I was an absolute train wreck, and I was walking around with a gun on my hip in the early 90s. And
anything could happen.
I was drunk many a night. There's allegations that I shot a clock in a bar down in Saddlebrook one night because they told me it was closing. I said, not if the clock don't move anymore. That may or may not be, may or may not be, if the clock don't move no more, it never gets to closing time. So let's keep going. But yeah, I was an absolute wreck. And I saw
what that did, whether you realize it or not, it showed you that someone isn't defined by their actions, whenever those are.
Exactly.
Okay? And you were able to do that because you saw it happen in yourself. You said to yourself, I was a train wreck. I made a difference. There was hope for me. There's hope for the next person.
Yeah, I've managed to have 50 second chances. There's somebody's been watching over me. I don't know what's there. And I've gotten my second and third and fourth chances. And I'm not going to be the ultimate arbiter of you made a mistake. I paid for some of my mistakes. So, I got away with a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong.
One of the reasons I do this podcast is because people don't understand what people go through in situations, and until you walk in their shoes and they're in their situation, you really don't understand. So what I try to do is, hey, listen, a little less judgment, a little more empathy. Yeah. And I think everybody would be a lot better off.
Serves you extremely, extraordinarily well.
Because anytime while I was growing up, it could have went sideways on me. But for the grace of God, I'm here.
Yep. And that's the one difference that I always preach is that there are certain people that just don't get the breaks that I got. That because of their situations, because of the color of their skin, or their socioeconomic status, or whatever, they just don't get the breaks that we have maybe gotten because of connections. And I'm a huge guy that says hooks. Everybody's got a guy. Every cop's got a guy.
Very familiar.
If you want a roof put on your house, I got a guy. If you need a landscaper, I got a guy.
We have a running joke in our business group.
Yeah.
You have any problem, someone's got a guy for it.
Got a guy.
So, and that is really true. But people don't understand that it's not necessarily they're bad people. There's evil. Don't get me wrong, but they're in a situation you'll never understand, you'll never comprehend, and they're fighting every day for their lives. The money that they get, the food that they put on the table. And people don't realize that. It's only when you guys show up and say, "Okay, I can put this together piece by piece because I'm familiar with everything that's going on here," that you get to see the real deal. While people are reading it about it or seeing it on TV and going, "Why are they doing that? That's crazy." They have no idea. And the reason I do this podcast again is because I meet people, and I'm a big offender of this. I make judgments right away.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And doing it, this podcast, now for 6 months, 7 months, it's really refreshing because I get to hear the stories as they should be heard.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you doing this tonight. I chased you around for a while.
Yep.
But I want to follow up with you. I really do think you have a book in your head. It may give you the satisfaction that you're looking for since you're kind of retired now. You're trying to look for something to do.
Don't get me wrong, Brian. I am wildly happy as a retiree.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I am living an enviable life.
Good.
I played about
you deserve it.
130 rounds of golf last year.
What's your handicap?
I'm about a 13,
wow.
14.
That's good.
So I can play when I can. My twins are down in South Carolina, University of South Carolina now. I've been down there 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Every opportunity I get to jump in my truck and
Myrtle Beach down in that area?
They're down in Columbia.
Okay.
They got great football down at SEC football, so it's a pleasure. I really, really enjoy the company of my daughters. One is a golfer. One is a poker player, so those are the two current passions of mine. I made them into 2 tomboys.
Good.
And my wife plays poker, and my family life is absolutely top notch right now. We're enjoying. I just had my 25th wedding anniversary actually.
Congratulations.
Last Monday. So I have no complaints as a retiree. Don't get me wrong, that juice is still out there. But I get it. I get it in other ways. I find that I don't have like a hole in my life. I have the fondest memories of my time.
How would you, I want to ask you that. How would you want people to remember your career? When guys, or your age and retired, how would you want them to remember you in your position as an investigator?
I think that I would hope that my colleagues and counterparts down there would think that he was a knowledgeable guy who really, really cared about the victims of these crimes and the families of these crimes. That was kind of the focus that I took on the tail end of a guy that would literally work to the ends until you couldn't stand up or your eyes couldn't stay open anymore. That I was always accused of being an overtime whore in the department. I would put in absolutely obscene overtime slips. They're like, how do you have 48 hours of overtime in a 40-hour work?
Yeah, right.
But I didn't want to go home when there was information, when there was a case going and it was hot and there was information to get. I wanted to be there. I wanted to stay there. I wanted to be the best at what I was doing, to be quite honest with you, because I'm a cocky. And if I get to walk around and tell everybody about how good I was and how this case was unsolvable and I solved it, that was
There's satisfaction. There's satisfaction in that, for sure.
There's a lot of it, because I have a shirt at home. It says Irish prick on it. It should said cocky Irish prick would be even more appropriate.
Well, I have to say, thank God there are guys like you out there, and we really appreciate, and I'm glad we got to see how this really works and how people could wholly understand what goes on when you guys do your job. And thank God there's guys out there that are willing to do the hard work and solve the problems, because if there wasn't, there'd be a lot of unsolved murders, and there'd be a lot more murders because of it.
I can't believe that there's not a line around the block to take my job and to sign up to do what I did.
I think you're pretty unique, whether you realize it or not.
I think maybe.
I'm waiting for that book to come out.
I talk to, again, back to Paramus Catholic. I talk to young guys down there, and I try to convince people. I go to career days over there, and anybody that has 2 ears that's willing to talk to me, I'll talk to them about what I did for 25 years and how satisfying it was.
When you went to work every day, it was different, and a lot of people can't say that.
Yeah,
to tell you the truth, and every day you went to work, it was going to be different. It was gonna give you a dopamine push, and you were going to try to solve something nobody else could solve. And to me, that's worthwhile, no matter what the situation was.
It was a pleasure, and my time had come. I reached my 25 years, and I knew that I couldn't do this forever, and the time was now to go. And I have a great life now, and
I still think you got a little juice in you. I think you're gonna do. I think you're gonna do something else.
There's juice, but I'm not. Again, I worked in corporate security for the phone company. I did investigations for everything. I did PI work. I've taken statements for corporate security investigations, all of that stuff. It's not the same. It's not the same. And if you chase after that high, try to replicate it some other way, it's not going to work. Right. It's not going to work, because it is what it is. My time was. Everybody's got a block of time.
That's right.
I had my block of time. I made the best of it. I enjoyed every second of it. But the time comes. The time comes where you need to hand it off to the next. There's guys that I work with that I handed off. Gershon Chirillian is one of my best friends down there. He's a first-generation Haitian immigrant. He took basically my position in the homicide squad. His father was murdered in Elizabeth.
Wow.
And him and his brother, Herv, became homicide detectives, because they realized, like, when the homicide detective came and told his family that his father was killed. His father was a pastor, and he was robbed and killed in Elizabeth. Still unsolved, by the way. He remembered and said, I want to be like that guy one day. I want to be that guy. And him and his brother both went into law enforcement.
Excellent, man.
Both ended up in the homicide squad.
Excellent.
A better detective does not exist on this planet. And I will take some credit for,
He worked under you?
He worked with me and for me for years and years. And again, just like I did, he took certain things that I did. Now he takes his squad every single time. They go to the wake.
Cool.
They go to the family and they sit down and they go to the wake. And it means the world to the family and to the people that are there. They're saying, what are all of these, at the time, largely white guys doing at a funeral in some Baptist church in Jersey City? They stick out like sore thumbs. But that goes a million miles with the family.
Especially with community service. The community understands what's going on.
To understand communities that are different than me. Listen, I grew up Irish Catholic in the suburbs, came from the Bronx, whatever my epitaph is. It's different than most of the people that I worked and served under. And if you don't have an appreciation for them, my other partner, Scott Jeffrey, we would go in and we would talk to somebody. We were doing a canvas, going door to door. Did you hear anything? Did you see anything? He would literally be inside, sitting down at the dinner table, eating dinner with somebody. We're like, Scotty, we got to move on here. I'm going to get my dick kicked in. We're on overtime here. You've eaten.
That's great.
You've
That's
eaten
great.
a dinner in the last 3 apartments we've been in here.
But that just shows you when they believe in the people that are doing the job, they'll cooperate with them. And this tension between the public in general and police, I think, is overblown. Most people can understand and can see that you guys have a job to do. You're doing the best you can to do that job. And, that goes a long way in the community. You'll get more out of the community that way than any other way. And, there's, the cops this, the cops that. People who understand what the cops do understand that is the only shield between them and chaos.
Yeah.
And when they see that, they're willing to cooperate. That makes your job easier. That makes the society less dangerous. And that's what everybody eventually wants. Everybody just wants to get on, raise their children, live their lives, and move forward without all this chaos if they can do that.
To be quite honest with you, it is hard. It is hard because it should be hard. I mean, to cross those boundaries and to get information and to help people that you've never met before and do that and put your heart and soul and pour it into it for however long it takes, a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever the case may be, it should be hard. It should be hard for us because if it wasn't hard, everybody could do it. And I guess that they're going back to your point, it does take a special kind or type of person to do it.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have a passion for it, if you're like, I
this
really like to be
this-
a homicide
right.
detective, but I don't like waking up at 2
And I
o'clock
don't like
in the morning.
working this hard.
Yeah, and I don't want to work this hard. This O'Leary's a prick. He's got us here 15, 18 hours
Yeah, right.
at a clip.
I want to go home.
I want to go home. I always said to that. I said, there's no homicide detective worth a squirt of piss who's got 6-pack abs.
Right.
You're going to miss the gym.
Right.
I don't care. You're not going to be worth a squirt of piss as a homicide detective if your desk is clean. If everything's in an organized place and this and that, like, you suck at being a homicide detective. It's got to be absolute chaos, and you have
got
to be able to
produce.
navigate it.
Yeah, you got to be able to produce in that state.
The one thing that I was probably best known for is having grace under pressure. And when things look like they were unraveling and stuff, I think that the guys that work for me could always count on me to be
and they see that. People understand that there's one guy in the room that no matter what's happening, he's going to keep it together. And that to me is what leadership's about.
And this career, a lot of it is acting and just portraying what you think you should be, and you have to be the strongest guy in the room. We've had cases where we watched a woman get stabbed 65 times on video, and me and another kid, Eric, that worked for me, watched this video, and there's tears in our eyes. We got to turn around though 10 minutes later and tell this woman's son that, your mom is dead. He watched her get stabbed, and he's hoping against all hope that she's in the hospital and she's going to be all right. She's not right. And now we're telling this kid that, unfortunately your mom passed. Unfortunately, you witnessed it. You have to, we have to figure this out. Right. You got to tell us the story, unfortunately. And to go through that, myriad of emotions in that shorter period of time, but you have to do it. You have to do it because eventually you're looking around and you're looking at the guy in the tie and you say, what are we going to do here? What are we going to do here? And I got to be the guy that says, don't worry, we're going to take care of it.
Right, we're going to get it done.
We're going to get it done. So
I really appreciate you doing this.
It's been a pleasure.
I think you have a lot still to go. I know you're enjoying your retirement. I want to see that book come out.
That's
I want
where I'm going to lean on a guy like you. Somebody needs to mine it out of my head. I don't know how.
I think with AI it'll be a lot easier.
Okay.
But I really appreciate you coming and doing
Brian,
the podcast.
thank you very much.
Thank you, man.